And now, our feature presentation.
Well, guys, I can't escape it. Not anymore. I have made up excuse after excuse after excuse, doing everything I can just to prolong the inevitable. But enough is enough. I'm done running. It's crazy to think how long it's been since a show like this took the world by storm. And a show from Canada, no less. When I heard about the overwhelming praise and armies of fans the show was basically creating overnight, I think, like most people, I had every right to be skeptical. It's gotta be overhyped, I said. All these people have to be delusional, I yelled. But no, there is no delusion here, and there is no hyperbole. This show is actually that good. And honestly, I don't think I've ever been more overwhelmed trying to make a video in my entire life than right now. It is a show so deeply personal that not only has it led millions of fans to help find themselves and question who they really are, but it may have led yours truly to question who I really am. And all this because our wonderful neighbors to the north decided to do the unthinkable and dedicate an entire television series to the close, personal relationship of two young men. Truly, something that has never been done before. That's right, guys. After months of waiting, you're finally going to hear what I have to say about the wickedly talented, one and only Nirvana, the band, the show.
A little Spider-Man. That's good. The webs. I'm the Grim Reaper of Death.
Now, if you're only familiar with me through this here YouTube channel, you've probably pegged me as that wannabe superhero movie review guy. And while that probably doesn't narrow it down in the least bit for a website like this, believe it or not, I do occasionally like to watch stuff that doesn't have Iron Man in it. Recently, for example, I've been in a TV kind of mood, and decided to knock out a couple of series that I've been meaning to get around to for quite some time now. My first time watching The Sopranos was everything it was hyped up to be.
Take your clothes off.
I decided to dip my toe into some anime not long after that, and was genuinely surprised to find out how much I enjoyed the first season of Chainsaw Man.
I know what you are!
But I thought I'd take a break from serialized television for a little bit, and explore some more shows on the sitcom side of things. A decision that led me to finally check out the Canadian television comedy series, Nirvana, the band, the show. And I'm very glad that I did, as it's probably one of the funniest TV series that I've ever seen.
Fuck. Boogeyman's been here. Let's keep going.
I do, however, try to avoid talking about comedies on this channel because next to horror, it's probably the toughest genre out there to have a full-length discussion on. Comedy is, of course, subjective. What I may find funny, others may not find funny, and vice versa, so it makes it kind of tough to explain or emphasize what works for me or what doesn't. To make matters even more difficult, it's not like Nirvana, the band, the show is all that easy of a series to recommend either. It's a great show, don't get me wrong, but trying to explain what it's like to any newcomer that's interested is kind of an uphill battle. And one that even the series creators themselves have admitted to. But if I can try and take a crack at it myself, my guess is that Nirvana, the band, the show is exactly what you get when you take the schizophrenic and absurd nature of Always Sunny and the Eric Andre show, mix it together with the Man in the Street antics of the Tom Green show and Jackass, and sprinkle in a little regular show and Smiling Friends just for good measure. Which is kind of crazy to say, given that the series technically predates a lot of the same shows, as it was originally conceived as an online web series that ran from 2007 to 2009. And yeah, I'm not sure if it might be considered a hot take or anything, but if we are going to compare both versions of the series, then I'd have to say that I greatly prefer the TV show that would come out much later. Which is not to say that the web series is without its fair share of accolades either. It did, after all, kickstart what would become a promising sitcom, now turned comedy franchise. However, to me, I just think the television series was able to work out a lot of the kinks the concept had in its early years. I think it's a lot funnier than the web series. The overall vibe seems to be less awkward and much more ambitious with its plot lines. And more importantly, it is way less problematic.
I can't believe you guys clapped for that. You're idiots. Here's the real song, faggots.
No.
It's also worth mentioning that both series do have a really weird Evil Dead 1 and 2 situation going on, where, yeah, the TV series is somewhat of a sequel to the web series, and parts of the web series are canon to the overall Nirvana, the band, the show lore. However, episodes of the TV series are just full-on remakes of episodes from the web series, and those episodes of the web series are now no longer canon. It is really complicated for what is essentially a shitpost in television form, but basically, it's the sequel that's a far superior version in both cases, and the only similarities they do have in common with one another are that of its setup. Nirvana, the band, the show revolves around the day-to-day antics of series creators and lifelong friends Matt Johnson and McCarrol, as they portray exaggerated versions of themselves, trying to get their band to play at a bar in Toronto, Ontario called Rivoli. Can you even begin to guess what the name of their band might be?
Nirvana the band.
Nirvana the band?
Yeah.
I think there's a restaurant that's called that as well.
Where the series begins to stand out from your average sitcom, however, is with how frequently it tends to blur the line between fiction and reality. As it is, Nirvana the band, the show was presented in a mockumentary-style format similar to The Office, and by extension, every other sitcom that decided to rip The Office off. However, every encounter Matt and Jay have with the random citizens of Toronto is entirely improvised and made up on the spot. Depending on how they react to these encounters, they can often change the direction of the story and dictate where the episode may go next. One episode, for example, may include Matt having a conversation with director Kevin Smith, which, yes, was planned out ahead of time, as both are very familiar with one another after Smith helped distribute Johnson's directorial debut, The Dirties, back in 2013. However, a random woman interrupting the conversation, urging Matt to take a sip of her alcohol, is nothing else other than a total coincidence. Now, in any other show, this interruption would be considered a blooper, and would probably be cut from the episode entirely and go completely unmentioned. Matt, on the other hand, just decides to go along and continue on with the interaction, which then prompts him to add in a montage of his character after the fact, trying alcohol for the very first time, going on a bender, and then ending up passed out on the side of the road. And yeah, as your friendly neighborhood improv comedy specialist here, I gotta say, it is really impressive to see Matt and Jay take a completely unhinged moment like this and spin it into pure gold. Probably one of the funniest moments in any given episode.
He's wasted.
It wouldn't be the first nor the last time something like this would happen throughout the series, but it's proof enough that this level of unpredictability can actually be used as an advantage rather than a disadvantage when working within the mockumentary and documentary format. And even though the series is heavily dependent on how spontaneous moments like these can be, you'd be very surprised to find out just how much of the show was actually thought up ahead of time. Where most films and television series nowadays do very little to pay off what may have been set up previously, Nirvana the band, the show has the satisfaction of full circle moments like these, figured out to what feels like an exact science. An episode may end with Matt going blind after watching the original Star Wars trilogy. And me being the massive comic book fan that I am, I'm just thinking about how funny and coincidental it is that a character named Matt now has to go an entire episode without the ability to see anything. What I did not expect to happen, however, was for them to fully commit to the bit and have Matt don a makeshift vigilante costume an entire episode later and spiral into a full-on parody of the Netflix Daredevil series.
Yeah, I can't deny that does sound epic.
It's almost like a joke that you'd see in any given Zucker Brothers comedy. Like, sure, you're laughing at it for how completely absurd and out of left field the whole scenario feels, but at the same time laughing at yourself and how stupid you may feel for thinking they would never make such an obvious joke. Especially when you remember that the entire episode leading up to this moment had been heavily focused on parodying Star Wars and only Star Wars. And yeah, in case it wasn't clear already, Nirvana the band, the show, has a knack for satirizing and parodying a number of different films and television series from across all different genres. A strategy to comedy that to me has always been either hit or miss. And don't get me wrong, we've seen clever uses of satire and parody before in shows like South Park or Robot Chicken, and hell, even the Naked Gun reboot showed us recently that the whole parody angle can still work, even on film. But like any form of comedy, there's a right way to do it, and there's a wrong way to do it.
Chinese versions.
You go too far in one direction, and you could end up just being flat out offensive. You go too far in the other direction, and you could potentially end up with stuff like the Jason Freeberg and Aaron Seltzer spoof movies, or God forbid, The Big Bang Theory, where pop cultural references are used more as a replacement for jokes, and every time one is uttered, you die a little inside.
Bazinga!
And I only bring this up because it seems like Matt Johnson himself kept this thought in mind when coming up with his own approach to parody throughout the show.
By showing parody opening sequences or by having entire episodes that are based on, say, Mrs. Doubtfire, you get, oh, these characters are obsessed with this stuff, without them needing to say, I am obsessed with it. It feels lived in, and it feels like these characters really are getting their cues from this North American supply of media.
Yes, Nirvana the band, the show, is riddled with pop cultural references, and there are plenty of episodes that lampoon the likes of Jurassic Park, Indiana Jones, and even really out there choices like the Wahlburgers reality TV show, but unlike its predecessors, it never feels like this method is ever being used as a crutch. The season 1 finale, for example, not only uses the parody angle to help further Matt and Jay's efforts to play the Rivoli, but it also gives us some much-needed insight into the lives of our main characters. Instead of just calling the Rivoli and booking a spot like any normal group of people would, Matt and Jay think it's much more rational to 3D print a gun, hold a bank hostage, and negotiate a spot at the Rivoli, just like they saw in the 1998 film, The Negotiator. And that's because these two are far from being just normal individuals. They're basically man-children that have let the media of their childhoods dictate what they do now as adults. And sure, in any other film or television series, the whole man-child shtick could get really old really fast. Especially when you duplicate the man-child in question and have two of them bumbling around. But Nirvana the band, the show, does make efforts to help divvy up the stupidity and differentiate the two from one another. Jay, for example, is just as dumb as Matt, sure, but he's not nearly as overbearing or gung-ho as he can be at times. Matt, on the other hand, isn't nearly the pushover that Jay can be at times, as he takes a much more authoritative role amongst the two. He's basically the ringleader of Nirvana the band, and as such is responsible for landing the band into deeper shit with every failed attempt to play the Rivoli. And even though this can be a point of contention throughout the series, the, in reality, lifelong friendship between the two is able to cut through all the drama and even the most absurd of moments. Sure, their plans to play the Rivoli are completely outlandish, even by television standards, but whenever the two of them are just doing something low-key, like singing about creamed corn or making a catchy jingle to the Wii Shop update theme, you get the sense that this is the kind of stuff the two were probably doing in their own pastime. Like, they'd be goofing around and riffing with each other just like this, whether there was a cameraman there to help capture it all on film or not. It's a nice change of pace, because where most absurdist comedies try to go for broke and get more bizarre as time goes on, Nirvana the band The Show instead found its footing by grounding itself in the genuine relationship it had between its two leads. In my opinion, it's what kept the show from getting stale and repetitive, and what gave it the potential to go on for what could have been dozens and dozens of seasons afterward. That is until the rug was ripped right out from under them.
I'm worried this might be our last plan together. What? Why? What? It's stupid. So stupid.
Yes. To the shock of everyone, Nirvana the band The Show would meet an unfortunate and very premature end, as it was technically cancelled after only 2 seasons. Leaving the fans hanging in the wind, and without our favorite knuckleheads finally fulfilling their dream of playing at the Rivoli. And I say technically because it wasn't your traditional cancellation that seems to plague only good television shows. From what I understand, a 3rd season was a part of the deal when Nirvana the band The Show was initially picked up, and to this day, a large chunk of that season has actually been filmed and even edited. The problem is, the television station the series debuted on, Viceland, just kind of shut down one day, and it's left that season in a weird limbo state with no network to officially broadcast it on. Which is genuinely shocking to me, even to this day. Like, you mean to tell me that you have an almost complete season of a beloved television series that's just sitting there, up for grabs, and the 8 years since the show's been off the air, not a single station like FX or even Adult Swim decided to swoop in and maybe pick the series back up? Like, sure, I make the comparisons to Always Sunny and Smiling Friends, but this show really does feel like it can fit right in with either of those, and do gangbusters alongside them. Well, okay, maybe alongside only one of them now. There were also talks of doing a feature film with Matt and Jay going on a road trip, but even then, there was never any certainty to it. And besides, making the leap from the small screen to the big screen is always kind of a risk. Not just because you have the inevitable, why would I pay to watch something at the theater that I can just watch at home on TV for free argument, but as much as I do love Nirvana the band The Show, it's as niche gets. You could of course do a SpongeBob SquarePants movie, a number of different Transformers movies, a He-Man movie, or hell, even a Downton Abbey movie, because those are television series that already have huge built-in fan bases with a high demand to see more of them. But for a little comedy series from Canada that aired on a now-defunct TV network? Yeah, I don't really think so. It's unfortunate to say, but the odds just weren't stacked in either Matt or Jay's favor. And it seemed like the only options Nirvana the band The Show had at the time or to continue living on just through word of mouth alone, or potentially disappear into complete obscurity. And this is why I love being proven wrong. Yes, against all odds, against all doubts, and against whatever pitfalls both Matt and Jay may have had to face up to this point, Nirvana the band The Show, the movie, would eventually be released, and into theaters no less. And although it wouldn't tackle the proposed road trip storyline I previously mentioned, the film would instead take a couple cues from Back to the Future of all things, and have Matt and Jay embark on a time-traveling caper, the likes of which we've sort of seen.
The time machine worked, and we are in 2008.
Oh my god.
Matt,
It's 2008.
I told you! The question is, how can we use this to get a show at the Rivoli?
That's secondary now, okay?
And you guys know me. I try to be as honest as I possibly can be while making these kinds of videos. I never try to undersell any of the films or television series I talk about, and I certainly never try to overhype anything and set people's expectations way too high. So when I say that Nirvana, the band, the show, the movie is not only great, but a once-in-a-lifetime cinematic experience, I mean that. I mean every fucking word of that. To be quite honest, it may very well end up being my favorite film of 2026, and we're not even halfway through 2026 yet. And yeah, taking the rest of the year into consideration, there are still plenty of other films that are on my radar, and ones that I am counting down the days until I get a chance to see. But when weighing my expectations and excitement for each of those films against this one that I've already seen, yeah, it's not even close. I genuinely believe no other film this year is going to top this one for me personally. I don't think any of them are going to make me laugh as consistently as this one did, or better yet, leave me in a total state of awe as to how they were even made in the first place. Like, seriously, with this being a feature-length parody of Back to the Future, they really have to skirt the lines and alter as much material as possible in ways they never even had to in the original series. Jay, for example, as the composer, now has to repurpose a lot of the same musical motifs from that film, just enough to where it's still recognizable as music from Back to the Future, but also just enough to where they won't get their asses sued off.
This is going to be a copyright nightmare. Like if you're watching this in theaters, thank your lucky stars, because this is going to be the only screening of this.
Fuck your own face!
Or how about what they were able to get away with just filming around the streets of Toronto?
Spider-Man!
I mean, sure, as I said before, the show itself is all about blurring that line between fiction and reality. And it was no stranger to capturing some pretty legally dubious shit on camera to help maintain that effect. Stealing from a museum and fleeing the scene of the crime, dodging trains in the middle of a subway tunnel, and sneaking into a restaurant to steal company property were just a handful of the antics they were able to get away with. And those were all within just one episode. It's to be expected that the film would have to try and up the ante in order to justify its leap to the big screen.
A little bit, right?
But to actually film a real-life police press conference being held outside of Drake's mansion moments after an actual shooting happened? Psst, I see dead people. And honestly, that's just the tip of the iceberg. The whole movie is chock full of scenes like this that'll leave you in total disbelief as to how they were able to capture any of this stuff on film. Like, you know how the tagline for the original Superman movie was, "You will believe that a man can fly"? Well, the tagline for this film should be, "You won't believe that they just let some random dude walk into the CN Tower with a pair of scissors sticking out of his back pocket." Or, "You won't believe that two idiots were allowed to drop an extension cord from the very top of that same tower, and then drag it all throughout downtown Toronto without getting arrested." Or, "You won't believe that The Hangover was released in 2008, and you're right. I don't believe it was released in 2008 because it was actually released in 2009. And I know this because I saw it at the ripe old age of 9 years old because my parents were just chill like that."
Wow.
I mean, sure, when Tom Cruise decides to hang off the side of a plane for dear life in a Mission Impossible movie, it's just as impressive as it is batshit crazy. But it kind of goes without saying that hundreds of millions of dollars and resources at Paramount's disposal were poured into its production to make sure something like that went off without a hitch. And that's not to undermine the efforts that were put in to make sure something like that happened either, but in comparison to this film that had no permits, no permission whatsoever, and is running off of pure ambition and luck alone, it kind of pales in comparison, don't you think? It's one of the few times I can think of where the phrase movie magic is actually appropriate to use when describing it because, yeah, while there is a part of me that wants to do research into how they pulled some of the stuff off, and I do want to be as accurate in those findings as I possibly can be, I don't want to potentially ruin the illusion behind how the film was actually made. Not just for myself, but for anyone who may be interested in watching this film for the very first time. And if you are planning on watching this film for the very first time, then I think you'll find it surprising to see that it actually has a lot more going on underneath the surface than just funny antics and over-the-top skits. As I said before, for a series as irreverent and shitposty as Nirvana the band the show, it's always maintained a beating heart at its core, centered around the friendship between Matt and Jay. There were plenty of episodes throughout the series that show the strength of that friendship, but some of the best and most emotional episodes weren't afraid to tackle the cons of these two being together either. And this film feels like a natural culmination of all of that. It serves as a feature-length parody of Back to the Future, sure, but I'd say it's far more accurate to call it a feature-length version of that conversation with my 12-year-old self video that went viral over a decade ago. The time travel framework offers a ton of funny scenarios. And going back to the web series era allows for some really clever editing and interactions between both the past and present versions of these characters, but it allows the film to address a common fear that even they have to face: getting older. It's Matt and Jay the actors, looking back at the last 17 years of work they put into Nirvana the band the show, while at the same time being about Matt and Jay, the characters, grappling with the last 17 years of failed attempts to play the Rivoli, with Jay taking it the hardest between the two and feeling held back by Matt and his insane plans. And sure, that may sound a little too deep for a movie where a guy yells Obama unironically, but as someone who has made a hobby out of working in the entertainment field themselves, and has definitely seen his fair share of setbacks working in that same field over the last couple of years, this shockingly struck a chord with me. I haven't been doing this nearly as long as Jay or Matt have, but it's not like I'm getting any younger either. Eventually, the thought of, how long can I keep this going, does begin to creep in, as you start to feel like the best years of your life may have flown past you, until you realize why they were the best years of your life to begin with. Those years may not have been full of successes, and you can easily look back and think about what you could have been doing differently, but when you do something like this for as long as you have with friends that you really care about, you don't even notice that you are getting older. And if we haven't entertained everyone, then at the very least we can say we entertained each other, and that to me is what makes Nirvana the band the show and the movie so special. It just started out as a little joke between two friends, and everything they've done with the series afterward has maintained that same level of earnestness. It didn't matter if they went big time with a TV show or theatrically released film, because every time they decided to get back together and try to play the Rivoli, it felt like a throwback to a simpler time. A time before monetization or the dreaded algorithm ruined the way internet media or media in general was made. A time when the funniest thing you could watch on the internet were just a couple of buddies goofing around in front of a camera, all because they wanted to make each other laugh. I'd say that Nirvana, the band, the show, the movie, feels like a pretty fantastic period on that era of entertainment, but ironically, the future for the series seems brighter now than it ever has. Aside from the fact that the film has brought in a new batch of fans, such as myself, who had never even seen or heard of the series prior, efforts are underway to finally getting that third season off the ground and into the hands of fans, both new and old. When will that new season come out? Only time will tell. Both Matt and Jay seem to be preoccupied with other projects as of late, and even though it feels like it just got here, it's been satisfying to go back and check out all their other work outside of Nirvana the band the show in anticipation of their new work going forward. But when they inevitably feel that it's been long enough and that the time is right, I only hope that I'm right there to finally see them play the Rivoli.
Nothing like a good feeling. Did you say nothing like a good feeling? Yeah, nothing like a good feeling.
Jay, I got a feeling things are gonna work out okay for us.